Hi everyone! This week we're going to learn how to read and write decimal numbers. We're going to be focusing on writing the decimal numbers in fraction form, in decimal form, and in word form. Let's go ahead and do an example. Here I have the fraction 9/10. The way that I'm going to write 9/10 as a decimal, it's going to be like this. The reason that I wrote 9/10 like this is because the 9 is in the tenths place. Another strategy to remember is that when you have one number in your decimal spot, it's going to be written or read as tenths. In word form, I will write it like this. Now let's go ahead and do another example. Here I have 9/100ths. As a fraction, you're going to notice that the difference is that I have 100 right here on my denominator, 100. So that's why I call it hundredths, 9/100ths. To write it as a decimal, you need to put the 9 in the hundredths place. A different strategy to remember how to write decimals in the hundredths is that you have to have your two decimal numbers like this. So every time you have two numbers in your decimals, you call it hundredths. And if you remember the one that we had before, when you only have one number in the decimals, we call it tenths. So this will be called 9/100ths. I'm going to go ahead and show you two more examples. In this example, we have 43/100ths. You're going to notice that I put two decimal numbers in the tenths and hundredths. So you write it like this, 43/100ths, because you have two decimal numbers. So it will be called hundredths. Let's go ahead and do one more. Here I have 4/10ths. If you notice, I only have one number in my decimals. So it has to be written as tenths. Now let's say I wanted to write 400ths. I would need to put a 0 in the tenths and a 4 in the hundredths. That would be 400ths. Remember, you have to have two numbers in your decimals so you can call it hundredths. Now I'm going to do some examples with whole numbers. I'm going to have 2 and 32/100ths. So I would have to put a 2 in the ones place and 32/100ths. I'm calling it hundredths because I have my two decimal numbers. And every time I see the word and, the decimal point, I'm going to say the word and. So it would be 2 and 32/100ths. Let's do one more with whole numbers. Here I have 4 and 7/10ths. The way that you write it as a decimal is you put your 4 in the ones place and then 7/10ths. It's like this. You call it tenths because you only have one number. So it's important to remember that every time you see hundredths, you need two spots. Just like how we had here. You need two different places. When you have tenths, you only need one decimal number. So down here we had tenths, so you only need one number, 4 and 7/10ths. Now here are the examples for reading and writing decimal numbers. Now let's go ahead and do decimal numbers in expanded notation. For decimals in expanded notation, I'm going to give you the example of 2 and 73/100ths. And remember, I'm calling it hundredths because I have two decimal numbers. So that means that the 2 right here is in the ones place. So I'm going to write there's a 2 in the ones place. So 2 times 1. For the next one, I have a 7 and it's in the tenths place. So I'm going to write times tenths, 1/10. And this is how you write 1/10. So students this week are going to have to remember that that's how you do 1/10. And finally, the 3 is in the hundredths place. So I will write 3 times 100. So the only new things that students have to remember for decimals in expanded notation is that this is how you write 1/10 and this is how you write 100th. Let's do one last example. 327 and 400ths. For this example, I'm going to say that the 3 right here is in the hundredths place. So 3 times 100. The 2 here is in the tens. The 7 right here is in the ones. Here, there's nothing in the tenths place. So I'm not going to write anything for the 0 in the tenths. So I'm going to go to the next one, which is a 4 in the hundredths place. So I'm going to write 4 times 100th. So this right here is the same that I had over here. 100th, the hundredths place. And this is how we do expanded notation with decimals. So this is what we're going to be learning this week. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thank you.